I'm first generation non-apartheid South Africa black. So I'm born in 85. Apartheid ended in 94. So for the first 10 years of my life, I lived in apartheid. During apartheid, black people were given the worst type of education, the worst kind, because the system of apartheid was breeding us to become the labor fodder in the factories. This was the idea. You had a job, you started in the factory floor, and if you were lucky and a white person liked you, you might have worked your way up. But this was the reality for 90% of my people.
So what does freedom look like for you now?
You ask great questions. I don't like you.
Vusi Thembekwayo is one of the most recognized entrepreneurs and speakers in the world. But behind the boardrooms and big stages is a man who once slept in his office for 7 months, chasing a dream bigger than his bank account.
I wanted you to help break it down for our audience. This Elon Musk Starlink thing.
Yes.
What is this disparity that it led to farmers in South Africa now living in Mississippi somewhere?
The major theme here is that those who benefited from and live in the world of white privilege still see black progress as a threat, unless it's black progress they endorse or black progress that doesn't immediately present as a threat. I respect what Elon has achieved. I deplore his character. I don't like him. Elon Musk, he's a hypocrite.
On this episode of the Afropolitan podcast, we sit with Vusi to talk about the cost of building audaciously and what it means to lead the next defining movement for Africa.
When does that happen for us in Africa? Where can they fuck around and give the right people the leadership reins for just 4 years?
A part of our problem is that Simba's still waiting for Mufasa to die.
We see the tweets, and every single day what we see is we love Afropolitan. This podcast is underrated. This is the best podcast ever. But the problem is 82% of you are not subscribers, but I know you guys are watching. So I need you to click the subscribe button so you can join the Afropolitan family. Thank you. Vusi. So people who are listening to our podcast, they may be unwinding from a long day. They might be in the gym. They might be on their way to a road trip. And I want you to speak to every African entrepreneur who may be tired, frustrated, exhausted, maybe even on the edge.
Sure.
And tell them one truth they need to understand about building in Africa.
That it is the easiest now it has ever been. So whatever it is we are struggling with, and for sure there are many struggles, foreign exchange, currency availability, protection of your IP, import, export, regulatory framework, policymakers who don't understand what we do, debt capital markets that are shallow. Even with all of those things there, for yours and my generation, it's the easiest it has ever been.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating. I'm sure people are going to start arguing in the comments.
I'm sure. But let me just say that the question you've asked me is about the rule, and what people will argue is the exceptions. And exceptions don't disprove the rule. So you can show me many entrepreneurs who did it the generation prior to yours and mine, who had it easier. But those are individual cases. On the whole, as a rule, it's easier now than it has ever been.
And do you see one specific industry that is really just skyrocketing, or you think it's a cut across multiple?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything online, right? I think we've all kind of ridden the online wave, right? So anything online for several reasons, but in part because those amongst us who are no longer amongst us, who are in different parts of the world, can actually make a difference in the online space without physically being here and without having to leave their lives behind.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, that kind of, rising waters has lifted all ships. I think anything online is without question the easiest sector that's springboarding at the moment.
And actually, I want to go into, because you said anything online, and I think it's interesting how you have been online before people even knew.
Amen.
Before the internet, sir.
Hey, tell them.
I saw YouTube videos from like 16 years ago.
Tell them. When I was still fat.
So I want to know, like, what made you go online when other
let me
people...
interrupt you.
Yeah,
I saw one of those videos and I was looking so crusty. And I heard the Lord say, "You're not ugly, you're just broke."
yes.
Money I don't enter.
Yeah. Anyway, I interrupted you.
Yeah, but I just want to know what convinced you then, like even 15, 16 years ago, to join online when probably no one even thought to do this?
So it's one of the struggles I actually have, even in the industry we're in today. I really struggle in industries where there are gatekeepers. I don't like the idea that there is some Oga whose permission I should seek before I self-express. And so traditional media has always been that. And so even though I was then, and I'd like to think am still, loved in traditional media, I really found home in a place where I can put out whatever I want to put out. And if 5 people watch it, that's fine. It's what I want to put out. So that's what drove me there. And I really, really liked it. One of my regrets is that I didn't lean in hard enough. I think if I'd leaned in more earlier on, I'd be 10x the size we are now. I just allowed myself to get distracted, which, say lovey.
You know, it's so funny you just said that, because I was telling Chica the same thing about of the framework of how I personally like to operate. If you're gatekeepers, that's why I fell in love with technology, right?
Yeah.
You're able to have permissionless leverage, right? Whether it's with
100%.
media or code. Going back to what I was talking to you about in the Naval book, that's what it unlocked for me, right? And I think when you now look back at the course of your life, right? What choices have you made where you have chosen to say, look, this door here, everybody says go through it, but it's more of the traditional path. I want to carve my own path because longer term, it gives me more leverage and ownership. What does that cost you in terms of misunderstanding from your peers, your family, your relationships? When you look back at it now, what can you say is the actual cost of choosing to go on the path less traveled?
So when I started my first business, I'd been working in corporate, and I just felt led to go and do my own thing. And I'd already been public speaking. So I'd had relationships that I could leverage. At the time, I didn't understand that actually relationship capital is the strongest form of capital you'll ever have. But as is the case in all businesses, you've got the notorious J-curve. And so I started at a point, and then things didn't quite work out the way I thought they would do. And I vividly remember my mom saying to me, she said, how do you think you're going to make money without having a boss? And to her credit, I'm first generation non-apartheid South Africa black. So I'm born in 85. Apartheid ended in 94. So for the first 10 years of my life, I lived in apartheid. But my mom's entire working life, bar the last, say, 15 years, was during the system of apartheid. And she grew up in it. And that was a very specific, structured system. You had a job. You started in the factory floor. And if you were lucky and a white person liked you, you might have worked your way up. But this was the reality for 90% of my people. And so when I, and some in our generation, were like, I've got a great education. And let me just say one more thing. So during apartheid, I don't know if you know, but there was clustering of society, and black people were given the worst type of education, the worst kind, because the system of apartheid was breeding us to become the labor fodder in the factories. This was the idea. And so our parents sacrificed so that we can have the education we do have. The idea was you get the best education so that you can get to the highest rungs of corporate, so that you can create a generational wealth. The idea wasn't get the best education to start a business. Mm-hmm. Because anybody who understands finance, the risk reward metric in starting a business is very different to going into corporate and doing your thing, becoming part of the employee share ownership scheme, working your way up, guaranteed salary, you get your 13th check, you get your bonus at the end of the year, you get your pension contributions. And if you move further up the ladder, your salary increases. When you start a business, it's all on you. And so my mom was like, this is not what the sacrifice was, right? And that strained our relationship for a long time. We went through years not talking, my mom, because, and I should tell you, when I was growing up, my mom was like my best friend. After my father died, my mom was the world to me. But we went through years not talking. I suspect I felt misunderstood, but also from her end, I can understand that she would have perceived that I was throwing away
Everything.
It's like, we work so hard for you guys to have these opportunities, and here you go throwing it away. The cost was the time it took to attempt to rebuild at that relationship, and the weight of letting go of the anger you feel.
Resentment too.
100%. Because also, you know this, when you're in business, it's lonely.
Yeah. Isolating.
It's incredibly isolating. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, right? Because, you know, in today's world, we make it all look easy. We celebrate the raises, never the failures. But beyond the struggle in the marketplace, the demon you face is you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you're right. You don't know if your timing is right.
If your thesis is right.
You don't know if your thesis is right. And even then, all of those are the academic demons. Then there's the internal demon, right? If you have unresolved child issues, if you ever ran a relay and came third, or, you know, some sort of event in your mind that kind of etched its way into your brain, every time you have a fail in the marketplace, you go back to that 13-year-old who failed at that test in mathematics in class. And so when you're going through that, you want to have a community around you. And to be isolated not only from a community, but from the number one person in your life was very difficult. It took us about, I'd say, 10 years to attempt to rebuild at that relationship. And the lesson, what I had to learn was that my mom is her second job. Who she is her first job. Yeah. So she is who she is. Then there's me. And she was who she was before I was born. And so once I was able to see her as an independent unit, an independent human being walking the world, having her own experience, learning and growing, and then she's my mom, I could then begin to understand and relate why we went through that.
I think last episode we had our friend Yele speaking to, we have this prompt on ChatGPT that we do that allows you to unlock some inner thoughts. And we all come to the conclusion as some of us as entrepreneurs have something else that's driving us, right?
For sure.
And yes, it might end up generating profits for our investors, our family, whoever, but there's always something underlying driving it, right?
Amen.
You've had time to reflect, right? What would you say is the thing that ultimately drives you to first have ownership over your life? Because I think that's part of also what I get from, you know, watching some of your past interviews. It's like, look, as Africans, we need to take ownership over our destiny, right? But what besides that, because that's a benefit, what besides that is the underlying thing that's driving that?
There's probably a counterweight, two different sides of the same philosophy, if you will. So the first is, because I'm first generation Black South African who could go to what were white schools. Yeah. As recall, we weren't even allowed to go to white schools.
Wow.
Right? So my education starts with me going to a black school, because we weren't allowed to go to white schools. And I vividly remember the switchover year when some of us had the opportunity to go to the white school. Now, the system was so efficient and effective that even if you were a child, you were still indoctrinated. You know, the white man was still the boss. And sometimes some things don't have to be said, they just have to be observed. Right? If you go to town and you watch elder black people relate a certain way with a white person, it codifies that in your mind. And so when you go to class and suddenly you're sitting with white kids, you have to go from, hold on, now they're peers now. Okay, I've got to learn how to build peer relationships. And then I started beating the bastards. That changed everything. I was like, oh, I can beat you. Wow. So why the big deal here?
Yeah.
Why are you so important? You're just a peasant, right?
Yeah.
So then you beat them academically.
Yeah.
Then you beat them at sports. And then you go, hold on, time out. So I'm actually better if I put in the effort, right? And that in part is why anytime I'm in a marketplace, in a market, in a sector where somebody tells me there are immutable inherent qualities of mine that will make it such that I can't succeed, they flare up a line in me that they don't even know what they're doing. You can't do business in Nigeria. Watch, okay? Watch. Just give me 3 years and watch this play out. Yeah. So I think that's the first part. The second is when I was younger, my grandfather had businesses. And then my father started a business, and my father's business failed. And we had a car at home. And in apartheid South Africa, black having a car is like a big deal. Right. So I remember the bank coming to repossess the car. And he'd leveraged the house to buy the car which he needed for his business. So it was a cascade effect. So the business died, and then and then the bank took the car because the business was no longer able to pay the car. But he'd signed surety using the house as an asset. So the bank came for the house. And my dad was a smart guy. So my dad went and got 2 German Shepherds. We had a fenced-off house, and he got 2 German Shepherds, Boss and Giant, because, where I'm from, when you give a dog a name, it must describe its mandate, So anyway, so we got these 2 German Shepherds, and I still remember to this day the shepherd coming, the sheriff coming to remove us, and he couldn't get in. You just hear the dogs barking. And over that period of time, my father moved us to go live with my grandfather. Now, my father came from a big family. My grandfather had 11 children. My dad was the oldest. And of those 11 children at the time, my father was the only one who'd moved out. And they lived in a very small apartheid house, which was a 4-room house. Language is important, not 4-bedroom, 4 rooms. So you had the kitchen, the bathroom, and then you had the dining room and the bedroom. And everybody was living in this space. And then we went to live there.
Wow. And
so I went from having my own bedroom in my dad's house to, suddenly it's time to go to bed, and you're fighting for a slot somewhere on the floor to find a place to sleep or something like this, or, you're kind of all cramping onto the bed. But watching my dad go through that experience, just let me explain. So, so at the time I was still going to the predominantly black school in the township. And between the school and where my grandfather lived was our house. So we had to walk past our house to get to granddad's. And my mom had forbid us to go into the house because dad was there. And the reason she forbid us was because they didn't know if the sheriff was ever going to gain access. They removed all of the furniture and just left the curtains so people couldn't see in. And so you had dogs outside, curtains closed, a hollow house, and in the living room, similar to this, a bed with sheets on it and a TV. And that was it. And he had one of these, 2-plate stoves things so he could cook. That was it. That was the whole house. And so my sister, my older sister, who still thinks she's my boss, but so she was like, let's go visit dad. And I was like, oh, great idea. And we went and visited him. And as we walked, so we're going to the house, and dad's so happy to see us, and we get in, and I'll never forget, lying on the floor was strewn these like newspapers with little red circles on them. I know now he was looking for a job, but I couldn't cognize what was going on. This is back in the days when they used to publish jobs on the classifieds. Yeah. And so it circled all these jobs, and we sat down, and he made us eggs. And there's a seasoning in South Africa called aromat, and he put this aromat on the eggs, and he gave us bread, and it was the best meal ever. We just sat there talking to dad. 2 hours later, my sister was like, okay, we've got to go. Dad was like, okay, I'll see you guys soon. And then we left. I only came to learn later that when my parents were going through that season, my dad would only eat 1 meal a day. That was his meal.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when we went to live with my grandfather, my parents had agreed that mom would come with us. So mom was staying with us at my granddad's. But that experience, that trauma etched in my mind, business equals risk equals suffering. Okay, so stay away from
Suffering.
Business. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. I get it.
So as a consequence, when I first started like going into enterprise, my mom going, you really shouldn't do this thing. I had to recall that was her experience. Yeah. And then each time I found myself doubting myself, I had to go, just make sure that it's not flaring up from that place where you are, where it's the demon you haven't dealt with that's putting you into that feeling. Yeah.
We created the Afropolitan podcast because we wanted to make sure we tell the stories of those who came before us and those who are coming in front of us.
Our stories deserve to be documented and remembered.
And over here at Afropolitan, our drink of choice is Inveroche, which is a gin from South Africa, because we believe African brands are global. So Eche, what are you toasting to?
To our builders, our innovators, to show that Black brilliance exists worldwide.
I am toasting to African creativity. I feel like the world is just blossoming with beautiful African storytellers.
Here's to legacy.
And stories worth sharing.
It's funny because as entrepreneurs, we all have that demon where you have to face down the fear. I remember I described in a past episode, I started off as an event promoter with parties. I had to psychologically go into venues and maybe there'll be a capacity for 1,000 people. I would literally say to myself, the day of this event, there are going to be 1,000 people here.
Wow.
Not 0 people, 1,000 people. And you would always face down the fear of, what if it doesn't happen?
Exactly.
What if people are not coming?
Sure.
What will people say? The shame. I think once you have gone through the ups and downs enough, at this point, my shameless meter is probably broken. I'm like, no. I say to her all the time that I think it's actually become perverse, where if you tell me there's shame on this other side of this door, I will run into that door, because now I feel like life has taught me that it's counterintuitive. It's on the other side of heart and fear that the rewards live in, right?
Amen.
But what I wanted to ask one more question was that anxiety, right? That comes from witnessing, and I think it's more about the poverty element of it, where you say, I've gone from having my own bedroom, my own kitchen, we lived in this, to we're now sharing this. Do you feel like it created some sort of like, I mean, you've already touched on it a little bit, but the background anxiety around what does poverty do for people from a psychological perspective? Because I don't know if you remember watching Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
And he says there's no nobility in poverty.
Yes.
Can we speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, so 2 things. And I'm actually curious to get your thoughts on this. But what I would say is that what a lot of people miscalculate is the trauma of poverty. Like, it's not an experience. It etches itself in your mind, and it forms your worldview. It, for many of us, creates these rather limiting foundational beliefs that as we get into the world, we hold these beliefs to be true, right? I'll give you a simple example. Like, the first time I saw $1 million, like on a digital bank account, my brain it like short-circuited a little bit. Like, hold on, how much is that? And I had to break. So when I have to think in large numbers, I still do. I think in livestock. So I mean, how many cows is that? Like, I had to actually see it in cows, right? Yeah. So when you think about today, right, when you hear about, Anthropic raising over $80 billion valuation and they're less than 3 years old, you go, hold on. The GDP of Zambia is only 50 billion. How did they get that right? Okay. So the miscalculation a lot of people have with poverty is the trauma and the reinforcing, limiting foundational beliefs that it visits generation upon generation upon generation. And those who are unaware that they suffer that trauma pass those beliefs down as truths, not knowing it's just a belief, right? So something like, how can you raise money not having built anything? You and I operate in markets where people have built nothing and they raise money all the time.
All the time.
They have an idea, they put it on a deck, they give it a name, an identity, they incorporate it, and that's the value they've created. And suddenly they go to the marketplace and say, this thing is worth X amount, give us money to build it. But for a lot of us, particularly in the African context, people want to see the thing, right? So I think those limiting foundational beliefs, for me, has been the cascade effect of what poverty does. And my hope, by the way, which is why I'm a fan of the podcast, you know this because we chatted on Instagram. My hope is that as you flare up more stories of Africans who are able to break through that, because those foundational beliefs form like an atmosphere and it has a gravitational pull. So anytime you try to break out of the atmosphere, there are others who believe the same thing who'll try to bring you back down. Like, no, you can't. What do you mean you're going to build a podcast and actually make money from it? What are you talking about? You're just going to make money from sitting there and talking to a microphone and publishing on YouTube? Time out. We don't do that here. And so there's a lot of work I think we've got to do actually to not only shift the foundational beliefs, but also shift the atmosphere that those foundational beliefs create. Just one last thing on this. You could unlock today 50% of the long-term institutional capital that's not invested in Africa just by shifting foundational beliefs. Because some of the people sitting in the decision-making rooms of large institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, have a set of beliefs that they themselves don't know, are limiting foundational beliefs, and they've created an atmosphere. And anytime you're operating in that space, they try to use those atmospheric forces to keep you limited. Yeah.
Actually, I love that you talked about this and I feel like this is so key to understanding your journey. And I think people need to hear this today, right? Which is around speaking, right? You're literally the #1 African speaker, right?
World.
You
let them know.
Okay.
Don't limit my boy, man. Don't limit my boy. Don't do that.
Okay, world, global. Okay, this is even great. It's even better. And so I think you're the perfect person to talk about this. So another fellow speaker, Lovey Ajayi-Jones, consistently complains about on Twitter and Threads how, as a Black person, she does not get the amount of money she's supposed to get from her counterparts, right? And she's a multi-New York Times bestseller, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, look, James Clear, Glennon Doyle, Gabby Bernstein, Brene Brown, these are my peers, right? And I should be paid this amount.
Amen.
And I'm curious, how did you get past those blocks of actually demanding what you're supposed to get, especially being African? And a lot of times when it comes to Africans, the budget is different.
Oh yeah, because you'll know this, right?
Yeah.
Because there are like universes, right? So there are the Americans, or they're in their own universe, and then you subtract 15%. The Europeans are now in the picture. Yeah. You take 15% away, you can introduce China, India into the picture. Take 15% from that, South America, Australasia. 15% from that, Africa. Right. So at any point in time, with 30% on a pari passu basis, what our peers are earning.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is important for them to hear. We have to work harder for several reasons. We don't have the distribution infrastructure that they do. We don't have the established media industrial complex that they do.
Yeah.
We don't have standardized industries, the likes of which they do. And amongst all of that, we are fighting for our share of voice when there's so many of us. So with respect, James Clear is operating in an environment of 300 million people, perhaps 60, 70% of the middle class. I'm operating in an environment of 1.3 billion people. What are we talking about? Real shit, or are we talking about rhymes? Like, what are we talking about? And so to get to the top of the game here, the economics are very different for us. But to her point, and I think she was absolutely correct, what I've had to do is I fight for my seat at the table, and then I fight for the price of that seat. So there are many conferences where I've been invited or billed to speak, and the minute we have the commercial conversation, it stalls. I'm very happy to walk away. I have no problem with this because I built this ground up. What did Rick Ross say? We built it ground up. You're just affiliated. So I didn't need to lecture at Harvard before I could speak. You're affiliated. I built it ground up, quite literally.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game. And I built it with no external fund, with nothing, no faculty salary. I just built it ground up. And so I think you come at it with a different sense of hunger. But there's a second answer to your question, which is this. Every single time I'm on the stage with them, I kick their ass.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. That when we leave those rooms, they need to ask, who was that? And so we've got to show up in a way that lets them know that when we are doing our part and we're delivering, you can't compete with us. The hunger of what it takes to succeed in my context, in my environment, is very, very different to their environments.
There's no DEI.
100%. And it's even that was something that's obviously been used to discredit people, right?
Of course.
They do the whole program layout, and we need one black female. and then they go and put chica there and go, and I always, even if that's the slot, just make sure that when you leave, make sure they know.
Yeah.
Make sure they know. That's the struggle for all of us has to be, when you leave, make sure they remember. Make sure that the second time they invite you back, this is not why they invite you back. So your answer was, how did I break through? That's how I broke through. I broke through by being the best. And by being the best meant each time the first time I'm there, I might be there because they're looking for the candidate, but they will talk amongst each other well enough to go, he's actually that guy.
Yeah.
Like, you actually want to have this guy in the room because when he brings it, he's going to bring it.
And I even want to talk further about, you have been speaking, since
donkey's years.
many years, right? And so I'm curious, how did you even know you could be paid for speaking? How did you know this could be a revenue stream for you?
It's a good question. So it's actually a good question because I studied, was taught, and did classical public speaking. A lot of people don't know this. There is a classical public speaking world. Similar to how you have a classical pianist, right? Where you are trained on the discipline, the art, the techniques, and the skills of public speaking. So I'm an orator. My favorite thing to do, besides reading balance sheets, which I should tell you, people tell me is quite funny, but it's my favorite thing to do. I print out financial statements and I read them for fun. Don't judge. But my favorite thing to do is I just watch speakers and I analyze and I break them down. It's like picture Floyd Mayweather watching the greatest boxers of all time. It's my favorite thing to do. So that's the world I come from. And that's a different stream to the Toastmasters world, which is a lot more what you find in the world championship space. And a lot of those people end up in the motivational world. So I happened upon it. I was like, oh, so people actually do this and get paid. And the way it happened was this. I've been doing classical public speaking back home in South Africa. There were several competitions and I kept winning. And then I won the national public speaking competition and I was invited by a corporate to come and speak. And they said, how much? And I was like, oh, y'all gonna put some money down on this? Y'all gonna put some money down on this? And this was 2004. And I had a phone and I had a SIM card on the phone and I needed airtime. And the lowest voucher airtime was the equivalent of about $2 today. So I'll take $2. The lady said, okay, no problem. Then I said to her, oh, by the way, you need to pick me up at home and drive me to the event, feed me, and drive me back because I didn't want to spend any of my money getting there. And she was like, cool. So they sent came pick me up and they took me to the event and they fed me. This was the first time I ate starters. Because where I'm from, there's just the main meal. It's like, you're hungry, mom cooks, you eat, you go to bed.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, we're serving starters. And so there's like this plate of starters. You know how it goes. There's like sausage rolls and all these things. And I see everybody going there with this small like little dish and plating 2 or 3. I'm hungry. I came to eat.
I'm leaving with some.
I'm leaving here with some.
Yeah.
So I packed up all and I went and ate and they paid me the $2. But then this is the point about when you show up, be the best. I killed it. And so when the phone calls came after that, I could roll forward. I could roll up. I could go, okay, so people are actually willing to pay for this. What should I pay for this? What should I earn? Then I went into industry and I solicited advice from people who were operating in that space. It was then, it's still my greatest cheat trick. I will easily humble myself to go and learn from people who've been where I'm trying to go. And as I learned is how I built it up. The struggle now is I find because I'm at the top of the game, I'm the one whose job it is to break that threshold. So I will bill more than anybody else has billed in the marketplace so that we can set a new normal.
Yeah.
So that a Stanbic IBTC can go, okay, we should be paying $40,000 for Etcher to come and speak. Okay, cool, we got it. We'll pay that. But if none of us are doing those things, then the market will assume the price equilibrium that is always assumed.
But you know what? I'm even more curious about how this works in Africa, because in the US, there is the Harry Walker Agency. Mm-hmm. There is all these talent agencies. Mm-hmm. There's like a formalized system that will, your talent, they will pitch you, it's very like demystified like that for Africa. What is it?
So I'm going to make a controversial statement now, but forgive me. South Africa is an outlier in the sense that South Africa is very much a Europe in Africa.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
I agree.
So in South Africa, we have agencies, large agencies, who are probably at their peak. We're somewhere between 40 and 50% of the total market. And as the market is fragmented and speakers have become brands and clients can go direct, and we've all built our online properties, their share of wallet has shrunk for sure. But when I started, I went to an agency and I was like, this is what I want to do. And the agency said, cool, we'll represent you. They put me through a training camp, a boot camp, and I spent 2 days watching people worse than me tell me how to be better. And I was like, okay, let's pretend this is working, but let's do it. And then at the end of that, they said, we'll represent you, but we're going to take 50% of everything you earn because we've trained you. I was like, okay, I'm playing the long game. I have no problem with this. And so I stayed in that relationship for a year and a half, maybe 2. And then other agencies came to me and said, we want to represent you. Do you have an exclusive? I said, no, I don't. And so I had other agencies representing me. That's around the time I made those YouTube videos you spoke about earlier. And that's when I realized that if I had a way of reaching clients directly, they wouldn't go through agencies, which would mean I'm not losing 20% of what I'm earning. I also couldn't understand, and I say this with love and respect, what am I paying 20% for? I'm delivering the product. I've built the brand. I've built the knowledge and the insights. It's me they want. Why am I giving you 20%? Like, perhaps said differently, I couldn't understand what value did you add to extract 20% from this transaction.
Yeah.
And I was right. And I'm still right. I'm still right. They won't say it publicly, but a lot of my peers, even comedians, will tell you this, that a number of the agencies only get involved when it's last mile, let's transact, sign a contract.
Yeah.
But they didn't originate the deal for you. They didn't go and source the client for you.
Yeah.
They don't position you in front of the client who says, well, we've got a conference happening next year. We're looking for speakers to speak on these themes. Who would you recommend? And do that work, which is, for people who are unaware, if you study the industry, that's actually the genesis of where speakers agencies started. They started as directories. And these agencies would publish directories and send them to event managers. And these directories were categorized. So if you're looking for somebody to speak on marketing in this particular space, these are the 5 speakers you should talk to. They earned that 20%.
Yeah.
And my experience was they just didn't. And so that's kind of how I broke in. And having broken into South Africa, the rest of it just came as a consequence of this. The rest of Africa is very different because nobody has that kind of
formalized.
Nobody commands the market like this, particularly here. I mean, it's the Wild West here. Here it's build a name, build a brand, make sure somebody can reach you, maybe have a publicist and they'll call your publicist.
Do a Guinness World Record.
Yeah.
Hey, no shame.
Yeah, that's your thing now.
No shame.
Y'all busy. I'm sure Guinness is like, again.
Listen, we're trying to escape poverty, bro. whatever it takes, man.
So yeah, I think but again, I just recognized the benefit I had coming from the South Africa context, because when infrastructure exists, even though you might like what the rules are, at least you know what they are.
Yeah.
And you can play according to them, and you can find a way to create a market opportunity for yourself.
Vusi, so you're a founder and you're also a capital allocator,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there were some misconceptions you might have had before you became a capital allocator that over time you've understood and come to understand how the game is played. What are some of those same misconceptions you see founders today make when they're coming to raise for capital or seeking funding for their startups?
Sure. The first is that, I should say, depends on whom you're raising.
Yeah.
And you would know this.
Yeah.
If you're raising from a family office or an angel investor, they have a lot more latitude about what they can do. But if you're raising from a manager who's allocating capital on behalf of somebody else, they have a very clear set of rules about what they can't do. The number one mistake I've seen entrepreneurs make is not spending enough time learning what those rules are. Because beyond your thesis, the market opportunity, potential for valuation growth, the portfolio effect, at the end of the day, I have people I need to report to. And if I can't find a straight line between the opportunity you're bringing me and the people I need to report to, there's going to be a schism there. And a lot of entrepreneurs just don't spend enough time learning about the people they're trying to raise from. So I would say for sure, once you've picked the startup you want to build, the industry you're in, the thing you want to do, and you've got your target list of investors, go and read their investment mandates. Go and see who their LPs are, because for every GP there is an LP. So go see who their LPs are. Then go and read the LP's investment mandates. See how much of that capital is development capital, impact capital. See how much of that is actual commercial capital. And then when you're having the conversation, if you understand the themes that are important for them, you can have a lot more structured, nuanced conversation with each and every single investor. Truly, the days of us simply blasting a mailer to 200 people and saying, here's what I'm building, can we get on a call? I think that those days are fast limited, especially today when so many of us are using AI to just check the applications up front. I don't need an analyst now doing it. It checks the applications up front. It sees if there's a suit between the application and our mandate, the stage and our mandate. And then it says, okay, we can actually advance this further. So spend time researching. It's very important.
I think you're familiar with some of the nuances between like the Nigerian fundraising ecosystem or investor ecosystem and maybe the South African ecosystem. For those of us who want to get some insight into the nuances in South Africa, what does that journey look like from the founder perspective and also the capital allocator perspective?
So the mega difference, I think, is that there's a lot more diversification and dispersion of allocators in Nigeria than there is in South Africa. But in South Africa, the allocators that are there have deeper pockets.
Okay.
So they can allocate bigger checks. Yeah. Fewer though they are. That's an important point to make. The second point to make is for the South Africa context, the fastest growing part in the VC space is CVC. So it's the corporates who are by law, I should tell you, because there's a law in South Africa that makes this the case. But it's the corporates who by law have to invest in the asset class.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a law called Black Economic Empowerment. It has 6 pillars along this law. It's to redress the economic imbalances created during apartheid. But 2 of those pillars insist and infer upon large companies the responsibility of developing small companies in their sector. It's the law. So it's 1 plus 2. It's 3% of your net operating profit after adjusted taxes every year that you've got to spend. So if I'm BMW, I've got to spend 3% of my net operating profit less adjusted taxes developing small players.
Wow.
So they have to do it. And so there are VCs who create a VC firm, but in truth, what they do is they go to these corporates and they say, we will manage those funds for you. Allow us to allocate. That's why the theme is important, because if I'm starting a mobility business, then I only want to talk to the people who are allocating in mobility. Whereas in many other parts of Africa, you'll find people who've got a lot more latitude, right? Yeah. They'll say, well, we're sector agnostic, or they'll say we're tech adjacent. Yeah, tech adjacent is not a thing for us. Like, pick a struggle, right? And do that thing. Yeah.
Wow.
And even I want you to talk about, you say you prefer zebras
yes.
over unicorns.
Yeah.
Can you break that down, what that means for African founders?
I got attacked for that. a lot of people caught feelings. A lot of people caught feelings. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's just take a step back here. So remember the asset class that we today have as venture capital is invented by the Americans, and they did it in the kind of the mid-50s period, just after the Marshall Plan to Europe. It was this basic idea that they wanted to build a strong middle class. What was the expression? A chicken on every stove, a chicken on every pot, a pot on every stove, a car in every garage, a family in every home.
Yeah.
This was the American dream: build the middle class. But what was recognized was that the economy in the United States was beginning to concentrate around large players. And so a law was promulgated. It was the Small Business Development Act or something like this, which said that if you invest in small businesses, the capital gains that would come from this would be zero rated. And so people ran to invest in small businesses. They were in earnest the very first version of angel investors, right? But as that formalized, the industry of venture capital came to be.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned this only to make the following point. It started because they wanted to build businesses, to build an economy, to create jobs, because that's what powers an economy. So by the time Africa shows up, they've had 50 years of maturing this industry.
Yeah.
And I think the question we didn't ask ourselves is, are we where they are now, or are we where they were 50 years ago? My thesis is that we are where they were 50 years ago. So we've got to ask ourselves, what were they trying to achieve 50 years ago?
Zebras.
They weren't trying to build unicorns. Yeah. They didn't even know what a unicorn is. They were trying to build real businesses in the real economy, creating real jobs, adding real value, because that's how you shore up an economy. But what we've done is we've chased the unicorn. Now, I should say there is a beautiful blend here in the African story. That's why I loved your thread on the PayPal thing, right? Because the blend for us is that we can do both unicorn and create real value. So it's not mutually exclusive. But the fear I have is the number of allocators on the allocation side, builders on the founder side, who think it's valuation at all cost. Whereas I think that there are other metric that we should be measuring. And that's what I meant by we need to be building zebras, right? So you see a unicorn once in a while, but you go to the wild, you're going to see a lot of these zebras. And these zebras are companies that are operating, adding value, paying taxes, and giving people dignity of life, right? So for us, when we started our firm, we said, we want to invest in 100 businesses and create 100,000 decent jobs by the year 2030. We've met the first target. We get to meet the second, but we keep a measure on this. And I mentioned that only to make the point that it was a lot more than, can I show that I'm creating IRRs to my investors?
Also, I think another angle with that, and this is where some of the mindset we import from Silicon Valley needs to be calibrated sometimes to our reality, right? Which
Great word, calibrated. I like
in
that.
Silicon Valley, I'm in San Francisco all the time, is unicorns speak every day.
Every day.
In your Uber driver, unicorn. In the cafe, unicorn. They've built, this is a unicorn city. I think the other aspect of that is, I think PayPal was one big exit for them. And a lot of those founders reinvested those profits across the dynamic. But the same sort of situation here might require founders to exit for 10 million.
Yes.
5 million.
Yes.
2 million.
Yes.
And then maybe deploy capital of 50K.
Yes.
10K.
Yes.
30K.
You've nailed it.
You see what I'm saying?
You've
And
nailed it.
so for me, I never understood what the backlash to the zebra unicorn thing is, because I think I saw some of the comments being, oh, Vusi is saying that we should not be ambitious enough. It's like, it has nothing to do with ambition.
100%.
It's like you have to crawl before you ball.
Yeah.
You feel me? And it's like, it's almost like we do this thing where we see the finalized version of maybe an app or a Facebook. And we then go to our engineers and say, build me Facebook. No. Facebook didn't start out as the Facebook you're seeing today.
Nailed it.
So if you're going to actually start with something, calibrate yourself to the reality of where you're at today and then go on from there. So I do understand the backlash.
Let me, this is, by the way, the strength of India and China.
Yeah.
What they're great at is they build for their season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just make it work for their season. They're like, this is where we are. I know one of the executives at Zoho, the CRM.
Yeah.
And I was saying to him the other day, I was like, man, when you guys started, your product was shit.
Yeah, I remember the early
You remember the early version of Zoho, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, this is Zoho pre-multi-factor authentication Zoho.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, and he said to me, but you know, those were some of the best years because the product worked. It was simpler and it worked for our context. And it has become what it has become. So to your point, I think you're absolutely right. But I want to say one more thing, which is one of my other fears is even when we exit, we don't come back onto the cap table. You know, a lot of us exit and we just, so it's like, okay, so you took the paycheck. Who are you backing now? Where's so the PayPal story? So we got to tell both sides of the PayPal story. The one part is they built an instrument of value and exited it. The other part is they then became a Peter Thiel.
Yes.
And they've invested in Palantir and so what I'm asking is, bar E, who else is doing that? Because you've got to jump to the other side and say, having been a founder and knowing what it means to be a founder, knowing what it means to raise capital, I'm also going to go to the other side and I'm also going to allocate. And I don't think enough of this is actually happening. I think it's some, but not enough.
I wanted you to help break it down for our audience, again, from a South African perspective, because I think one of the things we've recognized in living or being in Nigeria now is you see how fragmented Africa really is.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe when I'm in the US, I get more African-centered news versus people in Nigeria won't necessarily know what's happening in South Africa. People in South Africa don't really have the nuances of what's happening in Nigeria. This Elon Musk Starlink thing, because I know it came up with the whole Black economic program you were talking about. Could you explain to us who are like, we have Starlink in Nigeria.
Yes.
It's here.
Yes.
What is this disparity that it led to farmers in South Africa now living in Mississippi somewhere? What is this whole, because it's like, for those of us who are watching, it's like, Minnesota. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah,
it's like, they were making it seem like,
they're asking for help. They need asylum. Like, I didn't
making it seem
understand what was going on.
Like South Africans don't want internet. Like what is going on? Could you help break down what the nuance there
The
for us?
major theme here is that, and I'll speak generally now, but the major theme here is that those who have benefited from and live in the world of white privilege still see black progress as a threat.
Yeah.
Unless it's black progress they endorse or black progress that doesn't immediately present as a threat.
Yeah.
But they still do. Once you understand that theme, you realize that that whole narrative against South Africa versus, or the narrative that, Ibrahim Traore is a terrorist, it's actually part of the same school of thought. It's that when we determine our own rules, we're doing something wrong. Yeah. So let me give you the context. By the way, I should say that I respect what Elon has achieved. I deplore his character. I don't like him. Elon Musk is he's a hypocrite. Let's call it what it is. I mean, he has the audacity to tell South Africa that it can't have laws to empower people who are disempowered by law. I should tell you, a law which he was empowered by. His own father, who I debated at Oxford Union, benefited from apartheid by running mines during apartheid, which black people were not allowed to do. So Elon Musk went to school in a Rolls Royce because his dad was benefiting from the system he says we shouldn't have in place. Who does he think he is? Is the first point I want to make. Second point I want to make. Beginning of this year, I was in a country in the Middle East. I won't mention who they are. This country has incredibly harsh restrictions on Twitter. One of Elon Musk's CEO was in the same room with me. In fact, he was set 2 people away from me at this particular conference, raising money for Grok AI from that same country. So let me see if I understand this. Here is a country that limits the use of Elon Musk's technology, but he finds nothing wrong with how this country uses technology, and by the way, uses that technology to surveil its citizens and incarcerate them without trial just because he's getting money from them. Elon Musk's God is money. Once you understand that, you don't have a struggle understanding Elon Musk. He isn't led by principle. He's led by his God, which is money. Why am I saying this? First, we have a law in South Africa called Black Economic Empowerment. It's called Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment. It has had several failings. It's not policy. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But it still has demonstrated signs of success. Communities that have been built by minds who are operating in communities where by law they didn't have to build them. Now the law says, if you're operating in that area, you need to do something for the people. You're extracting from their land, do something. These are some of the nuances of this law. So Elon Musk wanted to launch Starlink in South Africa. And and we have an act that governs the telecommunication space, which his technology falls into, which act was very clear. He said, I don't want to give away a percentage of my business. Now, he doesn't have to. We've got multinationals operating in South Africa all the time. Black Economic Empowerment says, if you can't do an ownership to black people, then you can do what is called an ownership equivalent. So take the value of your company that you're going to build here. X percentage of it must be benefiting the indigenous local people. If you can't give that in an ownership, then what you'll do is you'll run programs that equal that amount.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we've got every single multinational in South Africa. We've got McDonald's, Ford, KFC, Chrysler, name them. They're in our country. They do business there. And so he wanted this whole thing about, I just want to come in and operate and I want to write my own rules. The problem with this, and I understood it from the government stage, I should tell you, I'm probably one of the most vociferous critics of our government. So there are very few times when I actually agree with them. But I understood their position, which is we either have the law or we don't. And it's either for everybody, it's for nobody. But we can't create special rules because one person has the ear of a man in the White House. That's not the way that game works. And so I think that they then took that and said, how else can we find a narrative to support this? Then came this farm murder narrative. Okay. If I get impassioned, excuse me. There is no such thing as a white genocide. It doesn't exist. Cut the shit. Okay. Because if it did, the universal world of whiteness would have made sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. Donald Trump himself went and presented to Cyril Ramaphosa images of graves in the Congo. He didn't even make sure he had the right intel when he was broadcasting this to the world. So there's no such thing as this white genocide nonsense. That's the first point I want to make. Once the white genocide narrative failed, they switched the narrative. They said, oh, there's no such thing as a white genocide. There are farm murders. And the farmers are white. And they're being targeted. Okay, let's double click on that. The largest by population segment of people in South Africa who suffer murder are black females. Those are the facts. So if there was going to be a genocide cited by a function of sector population, it would be black females. But let's look at this farm murder issue specifically. Even on the farms, the people who die in farms through murder is the highest number is farm laborers, not the farmers, which laborers are predominantly black. So even if we took this farm murder thing and said, let's examine it, it isn't even that, right? So what the real issue here was a whole confluence of geopolitical issues. It was the Israel question and the posture South Africa's taken on the Israel question. It was this Expropriation Act, which has been introduced now, around whether or not South Africa will expropriate land at nil compensation. And then it was Elon Musk wanting to launch Starlink into South Africa and getting pushback. And each of the people who were playing, different sides of this football game kind of came together at the same time. And that's where this narrative came up. It just so happened it was the wealthiest man in the world, and he had the means to flare up this narrative and drive it. Even in South Africa today, I should tell you, there are still people who are not for the Reconciliation Project. So it's not as if you land in South Africa, everybody's for the Reconciliation Project. That's why we, myself included, take very seriously the responsibility we have to actually build a country. Because I don't know, you do know that there is a town in South Africa where if you are not a specific color and a specific cultural group, you can't live there.
Yeah. I saw that on YouTube the other day.
So if there was a white genocide, how could a town only for those people exist? Surely this is where the genocide would start. That's where it would be targeted. Now, I'm not saying it should do. I don't want to be glib here, but I'm simply making the point. I take strong umbrage when people think we're not intelligent enough to see the games they're playing. Like, really, we can actually see the game. It's not really that smart. Let's have a political argument. Let's have an ideological argument, but at least let's have a good faith argument.
And I think that's what I want to double click on, because I have a political science background. We said the debates, government, that's what I studied. And I think I also have the Socratic method of debate and argument. And I used to believe, which has been discontinued, was there used to be good faith arguments.
Yes.
And there was such a thing as intellectual honesty.
Yes.
Right? Which is, if I'm debating with you and you make a point that makes me pause, because I don't want cognitive dissonance, I have to go back to re-examine my beliefs.
Yeah.
But in this game that's being played, especially these are men who, Elon is somebody that anyone who's a builder has tremendous respect for, right? But then when you try to reconcile hey, this is a man who's learned how to do hard things and he's taking us to Mars, and nobody can question his ability to build. No one questions that. But you try to reconcile that with, why are you playing these intellectually dishonest games where you could still achieve the same things you want to achieve by even being intellectually honest? So why do you feel the need to? Because I think what happens to, for those of us who watch what's going on globally, is, okay, so you have a platform. You're using this platform to stoke like maybe fake stories or fake news and spread misinformation that benefits you. And you're saying, over the long term, from a legacy perspective, what are you really angling for here? Because you're a man who clearly thinks about the eternal.
Exactly.
With what you built. But for some reason, you're not realizing with what you also put out there in terms of information, you are most likely going to end up destroying this side on a longer term horizon. So I think, what are your thoughts around that? And especially when it comes to this whole black narrative and people trying to be acting like we don't see these games. What is it about this stuff that they do that's clearly intellectually dishonest, and they don't want to really have an intellectually honest conversation? What is this game that they're playing? The
lesson for them to learn is this. If you lie to moderates, they become extremes.
Okay.
So quit lying. It's like, you and I are moderate.
Yeah.
That is to say, even though I have a set of views, I can be persuaded.
Yeah.
If you can have an intellectually honest conversation with me, present me with the evidence, I will gladly change my mind. I often do.
Yeah.
My survival depends on my ability to change my mind. So if you lie, and I know you're lying, then I have to assume
It's malicious.
that it's malicious. And that's what turns moderate
Moderates,
people
yeah.
into extremists. This is the part of the problem that, in particular, those who play the extremist game on the other side aren't willing to face. That they created the counterweight. I don't know if you saw it, about a day or two ago, Donald Trump was quite upset that China has taken several moves in the geopolitical space.
With the rare metals. Yeah.
And if you read, so I did this exercise, I took that thing and I posted it on my chat GPT, and I said, write this as if it was Xi Jinping writing it about the US. And what you realize is, what he's accusing China of is what he's been doing. What he didn't anticipate is that the universal law of counterweight and balance, for every push, there must be a pushback. He just didn't anticipate. It's for the first time the US in its history has a party on the other side that actually can fight back. And so the point I make is this: just be careful of lying, because you turn people who are willing to engage with you into people who understand, well, if you're lying about this, then what else are you lying about? And I now have to assume that the extremists on the other end were justified in their extremism because you lied. I have to assume that when they said you're a bad faith actor, they were right the whole time because you're proving it. So this for me is the thing about Elon that I just don't understand. He's at the level of influence where he can shape generations. And I mean really shape generations. Go to Mars is great.
Yeah.
Let's become a multiplanetary species. Fantastic. But he could actually do it now for the people who do exist on this planet. And for whatever reason, he keeps playing for these like marginal, I don't know, man, interests. It genuinely confuses me. I don't get it. I'm not sure what the driver is for him.
Chika had a post where she talked about, true innovation is about making impossible lives possible, right? And obviously, great.
White people have been fighting me every day.
Great thread.
All of them have come under my comments like you Africans.
Great thread. And when I read that, right, obviously one of the people I think about when it comes to innovation is Elon, right? And I keep saying to myself, because I read his autobiography by Walter Isaacson. I don't know if you read it.
I've not, no.
Okay, so in reading it, Walter, he does this interview with someone where he says, obviously Elon also went through some trauma coming up, whether it was with Earl or so. And he was, this was the joke, but it's very glib, but he was saying that, there's a certain level of trauma you get as a kid that there's a threshold. Over this threshold, you're a serial killer. Within this threshold, you do great things in life. I remember laughing so much at that. But it made me reflect, and I wonder if at some point when you have achieved so much, because there is always a driving force for all of us as entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
And Elon also has a driving force. But I wonder, at what point do you now get to the point where you have accomplished most of the things you set out to accomplish, which was the hard things? And then now the next battle to face or to fight is the internal battle, which is the therapy, right? And in your refusal to do the therapy or the spiritual alignment work that needs to be done, you now start looking for healing.
You become a danger to society.
Exactly. Yeah. You start looking for healing in these marginal things.
Let me, can I just add something to this? Let's put it out in the universe. Elon's going to see this episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elon. From a South African, with love. He would be a better example if he used his influence to help those of us building, help those in charge understand what it takes to build.
Yeah.
Because he is uniquely positioned that he can go, listen, I grew up in Pretoria. I live in the Valley or Texas, wherever he lives now. And in my lifetime, I have South Africa's GDP, the largest nation in the continent now. Sorry, you guys. I just want to let you know We are number one again. We've always beat, but now
We'll let you have your shot for this moment.
We beat you guys GDP. We're about to beat you in the Soul Cup. We beat you everywhere. Everywhere we beat you.
We're hibernating right now.
We'll wake up. Don't worry. The giant will wake up.
I might have awoken the sleeping giant. But if you think about it, our GDP is circa 480 or something like this $1 billion. His personal net worth is 500.
Yeah.
So he's uniquely placed to come to South Africa and say, this is the playbook. These are the rules. This is what it takes to build and create. Why he would want an adversarial relationship based and premised on a lie, just so he can extract from the economy, for me, seems short-sighted. And that's what I mean by he can actually make an influence, a positive influence today that doesn't require him to build rockets, right? If he just had a smidge of statesmanship in him. Because I think what Elon perhaps doesn't appreciate is there are a number of global leaders who would willingly sit at his feet and listen to what he has to say and implement the things he says if he just knew how to say it. It's one of the things, by the way, I had to learn coming and doing business here in Nigeria is there is the truth and there is the accepted truth. And the distance between those isn't whether or not it's true, it's how you position it. And so if you are talking to the Oga, you must still show respect and reverence. But if you show respect and you tell the truth, it goes a lot further than simply spewing the truth and hoping that it is accepted. It's a very short-sighted.
Actually, I love that you segue into a specific topic I want to talk about. It might be a little controversial, but I hope for this episode we can set the record straight, okay? So, earlier when we were talking before we started this episode, I was telling you how my dad did business in South Africa.
Yeah.
And also one of the podcast episodes you loved, we call him Uncle K, did business in South Africa, right? And there's always this unspoken thing around tension between South Africans and Nigerians. And it's weird because it's like we love each other and we hate each other at the same time. Like, it's this weird thing. Can you demystify it? Because you've done business on both sides. What do you think it actually is?
Done business on both sides, have business on both sides.
Yeah.
Ooh, girl, how much time you got? How far you want to go with this? Because we can go. We can go. So, to our Nigerian brothers and sisters watching this, let me, I'm going to take you over the fence.
Okay.
And I just want you to see the world from our perspective. Okay. So South Africa has 300 years of colonization with the black man and the black woman at the lowest rungs of society. Then there is a South African war that takes place. It used to be called the Anglo-Boer War. And I'm sorry if I always start with the history is important to me.
No, put the history. We need it.
There was the Anglo-Boer War, but it was actually the South African War. But in this war that took place, the fight was for who would run South Africa between the British and the Dutch descendants called Boers. And the Dutch descendants won. And circa 1948, they come into power. And they establish a government based on separate development. That's where the word apartheid comes from, aparthood. And so, and again, if you study the social ladder, black man and the black woman is right at the bottom. Do you know that there was a test they would give you to see if you're black in South Africa? It was called a pencil test. And so they would put a pencil in your hair. And if the pencil stuck, you were black.
Because it's nappy hair.
It's a snappy hair. But if you're like Trevor Noah, who's colored, in the colored community, there are, how do I explain this? Even coloreds are different. They're dynamic. And so there are some coloreds who've got flowy hair. And then there are some coloreds like Trevor who's got like afro hair. And so the test was, are you black? We stick a pencil in your hair. And if the pencil stays, you're black.
Yo, nobody comes up with innovation better than racists, bro.
Let me tell you, man.
I'm telling you, top tier racism unlocks things, man.
Weapons, bombs. You're just like, y'all are really invested in your hatred, though. Remember when they used to do those skull tests in the show, the black man's skull?
Yes.
To the white,
like they have to have scientific backing for it. I'm like, you guys are dedicated.
Yeah.
Like I could just hate you, but I don't need to do all this research.
Nobody spends more time finding proof than a liar.
Yes.
Because the proof the truth doesn't need to be, doesn't need to be lied about. Anyway, so I make this point only to say that the reason these tests existed was because being black meant something. It made you at the lowest rung of society. Yeah. Even there were rules and laws around jobs. So we had a Job Reservation Act, which meant certain jobs were reserved for certain population groups. Yeah. So it didn't matter how capable or talented you were. If you were not that population group, an immutable quality, you couldn't get the job. Okay. Now, I say that only to make the point. Early 1980s, the fever changes, the politics change, the geopolitics change. In 1990, South Africa, of course, is taken out of the kind of the global world, is shunned. We are removed from the Olympics, we're removed from the World Cup, all of these things. 1990, Nelson Mandela gets released from prison. And he wasn't released because of the goodwill of the other side. He was released because the economic system of apartheid could no longer sustain. Sooner or later, even for racists, things come down to economics. That's why none of us knew Elon Musk true belief until it affected his wallet. Then we saw it, right? Anyway, so in 1994, when the miracle of South Africa happens and we all take to the vote, one man, one vote, and the country is freed and the laws change, for the first time, you can be black and successful and not an exception. Because there were black successes before that. My own mentor who passed away, Richard Maponya, built businesses during apartheid. But he had to find workarounds around the law. So you had to be an exception to succeed. But now you could be black and make it. So around that time, the blacks are like, man, finally, let me get me a shot. And then out of nowhere,
these goddamn Nigerians
now shows up Chica now. Who's this now? And then, Chica, she grew up in the US and then she went to the school and I'm like, hold on. I didn't go to the US. What's this about? And Chica's like, yeah, and she's got all this. So the tension is because it's like, we're just like, can we just get a minute? Can we just, give us 50 years. 50 years, let us get a bit of the pie. Y'all can come later. Y'all can come later.
I just said, hell no.
The Nigerians are like, no, we are here. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the struggle is, it's why I take the work I do in the continent so seriously, because I understand the subliminal messaging that there are fellow countrymen who see me and go, why is he always there? And, why would he wear a kaftan? And what I'm trying to show them is we're all just people. Like we all have families. We're trying to put food on the table. We all have dreams and aspirations. And everywhere you go, everybody's struggling with something. Yeah. And that actually, if we bonded around what makes us common than what makes us different, we would go a lot further, much, much quicker. So that's the part of the story that often is not told. Mm-hmm. There are other nuances to it, but that's probably the major thematic part that I think if it was understood from the other end, people go, okay, got it. I get it now.
You know what's funny? So then let's give the Nigerian perspective, because I'm sure we're going to have South African viewers listening. Mm-hmm. So in Nigeria, obviously we had colonialism as well, but the country is also 200 million people and our space is tight.
Yeah.
There's 20 million of us, right?
You can't all fit
when
here.
we look at Instagram or we look at Google Maps of photos, we see South Africa, we see Cape Town, we see the beautiful water, we see the
cliffs,
views, we see everything looks soft, right? It looks like heaven, what heaven would look like to us. So for a lot of Nigerians, we're fleeing poverty. Things are tight. So when we come into South Africa, it's the way God said milk and honey. And it's like, this is the land we have to be able to succeed in. So I think from the Nigerian's perspective, this would definitely help to shatter some of this nuances. But it's almost like Nigerians are moving from survival. So when you see Nigerians in South Africa moving like, yo, these guys, they don't respect red lights. It's because poverty is... And I'm not saying that there's no poverty in South Africa, but I think one of your videos, you talked about how there must be something like maybe government welfare.
Yes.
In Nigeria, we don't have welfare.
I know. And by the way, thank you so much for saying that. Because what is often misunderstood, in South Africa, we've got a very strong social welfare system.
Yes.
Right. If you are unemployed, there is a grant from the government. If you are a single mother with a child, you get paid to raise the child.
Wow.
Right? If you are old, there is an elderly people grant. If you are indigent, there is a grant from the state. So the state has several support programs for the people at the lowest rungs of society. The reason this is because the state says some of them are not there by design. It's because the history made it that they were forever destined for that, right? Yeah. And that would be their portion. Here's the difficulty, that there are some people who come into the country and abuse that system.
Yeah.
And when that system is abused, this is, I always say, like, Africa has a PR problem.
Yeah.
And before we have a PR problem to the world, we have a PR problem with each other.
Yeah.
Like with each other. And so I'm fascinated by, why don't we do exchanges where you take 1,000 young people from Nigeria to South Africa, 1,000 young people from South Africa to Nigeria every year. And you just have people learning what's on the other side. Because even I didn't understand it until I traveled. And I was like, then I went to Uganda for the first time. I've been going there now for 20 years. Yeah. Then you go to Kenya, then Rwanda. Then you go, oh, wow, this is very different to what I'm used to back home, right? So I take your point about it looks like heaven in the other side. Now that you've said that, can you see why the occupants of heaven are like, we just arrived? Peter, just open the gate. Can we get a minute?
Give us space. But I wanted to get your opinion, because this is a good conversation to get your opinion on this, which is this whole DEI narrative, which goes back to the whole intellectual dishonesty thing.
Yeah.
Now, are there times in which these programs have been abused? Yes.
Sure.
Right. Similar to what we were talking about, the Black economic empowerment, even the social welfare, these things get abused, right? But the intention of them was not abuse. But it seems like the conversation now has turned into anything DEI is 100% bad, anything woke is 100% bad. When, if we're being intellectually honest, places like America, places like South Africa, even in Nigeria, but let's talk about America in of itself, had a history of repairing wrongs. Reparations were paid out to the Japanese.
Yeah.
Reparations were paid out to the Jews during the World War II. So you have examples of this. Now, when you now try to hold your feet to the fire and say, well, what is good for the goose should be good for the gander, it now turns into, oh, well, that was 1,000 years ago. What can you help break down this narrative around DEI that allows us to have an intellectually honest conversation about it, which says, yes, it's not necessarily about having handouts to the day that we die. No one's necessarily advocating for that. But it's to say, look, there was a wrong that was created. It's important to acknowledge the historical accuracy and fact of this wrong. And these are the ways in which we're taking to mitigate. Because take Germany, for example. This is a country that obviously the Holocaust happened in. When you go to Germany, there are memorials to the Holocaust.
Sure.
This is a country that's acknowledged the wrongs that they did. And it didn't make them weaker.
Sure.
It didn't stop them from winning future World Cups.
Sure.
So, and I remember, like, as somebody who fell in love with America as a kid, one of the things that I got from it was home of the brave, land of the free,
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
And part of that is courage,
Yeah.
right? The courage to say, listen, I've done something wrong. I can come and admit it and we can move forward.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's this narrative now where it's like, we don't want to acknowledge any history that looks bad.
Yeah.
And we only want positive history, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think a nation survives when it can't acknowledge both sides of its past, right?
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit?
I mean, I
to
think
that?
those who deny their history are bound to repeat it.
Yeah.
This is a big issue, right? I would say to you that, so I was in Cambridge a few months ago, and whilst in Cambridge, I went to the Fitzwilliam Museum, which museum was founded by the Fitzwilliam family. They put together, I want to say, £100,000 in a grant to found this museum. And it's the most majestic thing. You know, they've got pieces of Persian history that date back 5,000 years. And they had an exhibition happening on African history. And I went and had a look. And one of the things that annoyed me was the exhibition started at slavery.
Ah.
And I was like, but that's not the opening scene of our story.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm walking through this museum and there's a wall with a couple of stats on it. And one of the walls says, at the end of slavery, the British government paid to the slave owners to the tune of $20 million for the losses they would suffer for not owning slaves. And then it goes down the wall and it said, and the British government paid to the enslaved people nothing.
Wow.
How do you debate with somebody who can't acknowledge that fact as an injustice? one of the things I've had to learn is sometimes just don't show up for the debate.
Yeah.
Because the bigotry is so deeply embedded that the facts don't matter. Right? How do you argue that in the world's population, the demographic of people who suffer the most structural injustice are black females? What's the debate about? Which report are you reading? Right? I will say this to you. I find it interesting that the people who pretend demographics don't exist defer to their demographic privilege as soon as the consequences of those demographics is visited upon them. So, well, just human. Demographics don't exist. And then there is gang violence somewhere. See? Blacks. It's like, but I thought you just said we're all just human. Yeah, you just said. How did you see their skin color? You just told me you're colorblind.
Yeah.
When did you see their skin color?
Hey.
And so I've had to learn the hard way. Don't even debate, argue with the bigotry, because even in the marketplace, right? We also see it in the marketplace.
Yeah.
I had a very large European client who were looking for me to speak at this particular conference, and then they came and they go through the whole process. And once they started dealing with my commercial team, it became very clear that who they thought I was is not who I am. And it was just reflected on the ticket price. And so they were like, well, this is our budget. And so my team, very cleverly, my team, I've got a team in the US, the team in the Philippines, they were like, send us the program. And they did. And I saw the other speakers on. And I said, these are my peers. I know exactly what these guys charge. So this is not a budget question, right? And I say that only to make the point that there's no point having a debate when people are deeply entrenched in their bigotry. You've got to let them run with those beliefs and let it be what it is. Yours and my challenge is every time we're in the market, we need to win.
Yeah.
And demonstrate we can win and support each other when we win and hold each other accountable when things go wrong. Mm-hmm. This is why I think, the point you made just now, it's so important. So important. I don't think you guys understand what you're doing with this podcast, but it's like so important to color, demystify, present Nigeria in a manner that is not yet out there in the ether. Right. I promise you're not just putting together an episode as a couple. Like there are some of us you won't know who are operating in different markets who watch. And it's the stories you present that we go, oh, so wow. Actually, I'm learning about Nigeria beyond jollof rice. This is really cool. This is not about juju, Afrobeats, or the, I should tell you, the traffic in Lagos. Man, oh man. Like, damn.
Yeah. But actually, speaking about this, what is the most controversial opinion you have about success in order for people to really build?
About success?
Yes.
It would probably be that at the end of the day, it's your fault. So, yeah, and I know my people don't like that. They come after me for that all the time. But I just feel like your reasons are probably valid. I say this to, friends and peers all the time. The problem with excuses is that they're right. Your reasons are perfectly valid, but it's still your fault. It's still up to you. You've still got to make it. When we started our venture firm, I had exited a business, had some money. I was invited on Dragon's Den to come and invest. Did a couple of deals, and then I was like, I actually like this. I should think about doing this. And a friend of mine who was working then as a fund lawyer, still is now, he said to me, you should raise a fund. I was like, cool, we'll do it. And we went out to raise a fund. So we had this idea, we're going to build a venture fund. And, for a lot of people, if you arc back 12, 13 years ago, like venture wasn't a thing. We were still kind of defining the category. You have to recall, before Andela becomes a unicorn, before Flutterwave is founded, Paystack didn't exist. Like venture wasn't a thing. People knew small business funding. I was like, what's this venture story? And in many parts of the continent, it still is the case. Policymakers think these two things are the same, that a small business is a startup. And so So when we started, we went out into the marketplace to try and raise money. No support, even though I'd had a success in business. At the time, I'd already been a director of a listed company in South Africa. I'd built, scaled, sold a business. I was less than 30 and I'd had a decade of success by God's grace. Even then, no support. And so I thought, well, I made money from the business I sold. I'll do it. So I put my own money in. So in truth, our first fund was my own money that went into this. We just happened to run it along fund principles. So by the time we had to convert to the GPLP structure and all of that stuff, we were ready to do it. But I could have given up then. And I would have been right. My excuses were perfectly valid. The institutional investors had no mandate to allocate capital at the time. Any of the capital that you could get, if you didn't have experience managing money, nobody was taking those calls. And so there were so many barriers. If we didn't do it, we would be right. But I still would have failed. So my view is this. At the end of the day, your success is up to you. And once you understand that it is both you're accountable, you're responsible, and your fault, once you understand you have 100% agency, then you move the way you need to move.
From a leverage perspective,
yes,
right? The Chinese seem to have figured out what leverage looks like on this geopolitical sphere, right? What can Africa learn from what the Chinese have done in terms of how they've showed up on the world stage? And especially because 40, 50 years ago, China's story looked remarkably different. I don't think anyone could have extrapolated what China has been able to accomplish.
Sure.
What examples can Africa look towards the Chinese from to learn from, especially from a leverage perspective?
I would say, one of the outliers about China, before I answer your question, is they're a homogenous society, right? What is it? 1 billion people there. They're about 90% of them are Han, right? So they are effective because they are homogenous, and I think we don't have those dynamics here. How many tribes in Nigeria alone?
300.
Yeah.
There you go. How many indigenous languages? Right?
A lot.
So we need a model of how do we create a sense of universality. There's a generation before us, circa 1950s, 60s, that figured this out. And so if you think about, that conference that takes place between Kwame Nkrumah
in London,
and they figured out that there was a problem at the time, and all of us, even though we're coming at it from different angles, we're dealing with the same issue. And so our problem became our universality.
Yeah.
And we attacked it.
Yeah.
And that's what ended colonialism, et cetera, et cetera. I think the challenge for us is that we're led by leaders who don't understand this. And so the reason we don't have leverage is because whichever other force in the world, whether it is Washington or Beijing, knows that it can always pit Maputo against Lagos, against Pretoria against so-and-so. And you still see it, right? You have our leaders who go to a country and all 54 of them fly in to meet with one leader there. It's the most extraordinary thing. It's still happening.
Yeah.
If we could do the one thing and we present as a block, then you might start talking about leverage. But until then, it's going to be very difficult because we're constantly waiting to be divided amongst each other.
Did you listen to Jay-Z's verse on God Did with DJ Khaled? I don't know if you listen to hip hop.
I mean,
but I think in one of the verses he says they don't fucked around and gave the right niggas wealth.
That's right. That's right.
And I keep going back to that verse where when does that happen for us in Africa? Where can they fuck around and give the right people the leadership reins for just 4 years, right? Whether it's in South Africa, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's in Zambia, like. What does that look like when our own Avengers show up on the world stage and we're like, look, we're not putting up with that. We're not putting up with this. We know how the game is played. We know how the pie is divided. There's no more Berlin Conference going on, It's
a good question. I think a part of our problem is that Simba's still waiting for Mufasa to die. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We have a real problem with this. Yeah. If you look at the average age of,
and they be living long.
Man, they ain't gonna
live.
Bro.
We thought one of our presidents was gonna go, and he just had a second win.
It's something about when they get into that office.
They get to the office and they get rejuvenated.
They all fly somewhere, and then up in Russia and come back, and you're just like, look, about 20 years younger.
Joe Biden falling down steps. These ones are running down steps. Like, I don't understand what's going on.
I really don't.
I think, like we by the way, there are very capable people waiting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Some of them I know, some of them are already in politics across the range. Whether you're in like I say to people all the time, my number one brag sheet line item is that there is no part of the continent I would be stranded for 20 minutes. Yeah. Like I've spent the past 10 years making Africa home. Like if you dropped me in Guinea-Conakry without a phone in 20 minutes, I'd be sorted because I've invested in those relationships. So in many parts of the continent, whereas people have like a McKinsey research view, I've seen it on the ground and I know it on the ground. And I can tell you that the agitators are there, the talent is there, the leadership is there. But for whatever reason, we are just not aggressive enough to ask Mufasa to kindly take a back seat, right? And until that happens, the playbook is going to be the playbook. Because I do think if a new generation of leaders in West Africa emerged and a new generation of leaders in Southern Africa emerged, we've all kind of gone to the same schools. We meet each other at Said Business School or Harvard this or UNGA or we party together. So for us, it's a phone call away. This happened on a WhatsApp, started on Instagram. See what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And I think those relationships built like this, if you extrapolate those and put those at a political level and you give them leverage and power, the dynamics are very, very different. But I think we're just too polite. We're not yet saying, okay,
it's time.
Yeah, it's time. You've done it now. We get it.
We got it from here.
Yeah, it's like you've had 30 years. Yeah. There's you've had 40 years, 50 years. There's just nothing you're going to do now that's different from what you've done in the past.
And actually, one other question I have, because you talked about living in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So what does freedom look like for you now?
Freedom is my life now. Like, I get to do what I like. I really get to do what I like. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of work taking place. We've changed the business radically over the past year. We've finalized, exited, returned capital on our venture fund. We're not raising another venture fund. Yeah, that was wild. Like, I had a discussion with a friend the other day, and he was like, "What do you mean you're not raising? Didn't you? The whole point was to get to Fund 3." And I said to him, "I've spent the past 10 years learning this. I wish somebody told me sooner. Africa isn't. Let me say it this way: we can go further if we think beyond fund terms. This is why so many, by the way, in my industry, are busy raising continuation funds because they can't exit. And so you raised on a 5+2. It's time to exit now. You've got these portfolios you've marked in your book at an IRR of X, and you're finding nobody's willing to buy those portfolio companies at that IRR. And then you add the fact that I mentioned to you earlier, the sector is soft at the moment. A lot of money is either going to private credit or infrastructure. And so we're not attracting enough capital into the space for the number of transactions that are out there. This is why you think about the big boys, Flutterwave, Yoko, etc. They raise predominantly in other parts now, not here, because nobody's able to write those check sizes. So I said, I don't think we are at 5+2.
Yeah.
I think the market requires longer plays. So we've converted now into a permanent capital vehicle, and that's the thing that we're going to be doing. And you can model some liquidity into this. But I say that only to make the point, like, if we don't think beyond those limitations and we ask ourselves, what are the innovations we can introduce unique to our space, then we're not going to be able to answer those questions for this season. And it's important that we do. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. That's lovely. Etche, remember that time I walked into a bank, I'm not going to give the name, and I asked them for $1,000 and they told me no, they cannot withdraw any dollar from me. And I was so upset. And I just remember asking everybody, how can I solve this issue? And I'm so happy that I finally have VBAN to finally solve this issue for me.
You know, the thing is, you should be able to have access to your money anywhere in the world when you get paid, right? So I'm grateful we have VBAN as a sponsor for the Afropolitan podcast. With VBAN, you're able to get paid in foreign currencies, whether it's pounds, USD, euros, and you can actually spend it in local currency as well. Now, you're also able to get a virtual card, which you can use to spend in and pay for services across the world, right? So I'm grateful to have VBEN as a sponsor.
You can download it on the Apple or Google Play Store. And remember, when you sign up, you use Afropolitan so they know you came from this podcast.
So babes, I'm always talking to you about investing. How's your journey going so far?
It started because you've been on my head for the past 6 months about investing, and you'll be proud of me because I actually found an app I love. It's called RiseVest. And actually what I love about it is that you can start with $10 and it automates everything for you. So literally I just go into the app and literally it's investing for me every single day.
Yeah, because we know you're not going to be a trader anytime soon. But with RiseVest, you're going to be able to invest in US stocks, right? Fixed income, real estate, etc. Right? And so I'm happy you're finally on board.
And you know, the funny thing too is I always tell my girls that as women, we're not investing enough, we're not talking about it, and we're not having these conversations. So I shared it in all my group chats. So you can find RiseVest on the Apple and Google Play Store. Okay,
make sure to use code Afropolitan so that they know that we sent you. You know how every week we sit down with people who've done it, people who've built, people who've led movements, people who've created culture. What if you could do more than just listen to them? That is why we built Convo by Afropolitan. On Convo, you're able to book one-on-one video calls with in-demand experts from Africa and the diaspora. Go to convo.vip to get access to your next mentor, because sometimes one convo can change your entire path.
I now want to move to a rapid question, right? So this is think quick on your feet.
What is it?
Rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire,
Oh,
right?
Man. All right, let me get my posture right.
Okay. So you said you're an orator. So who's your favorite speaker to
Frederick
watch?
Douglass.
Oh, why?
Greatest orator of all time. The
OG.
man he's the OG of OG. Like, you know, Frederick Douglass wrote the rules of public speaking that public speakers didn't know existed. Alliteration, the ability to emote using language, to construct sentences using metaphors. I mean, put it to you this way. You ever listen to Rakim, the rapper?
Yeah.
That's like Frederick Douglass with a beat. Like Frederick Douglass was the man.
Oh, I love it. What is the most expensive mistake you've ever made?
I shan't give the answer that immediately came to mind.
I feel like I may know.
You know what?
Hey. What's the second biggest mistake? Oh, but that was a setup. That was a setup question right there.
Yeah, that's what ladies do.
Next question.
Yes, okay. What is one book every African entrepreneur should read besides your own? But plug your own too.
I mean, Magna Carta. Okay. Still, you know, you got to read the Magna Carta of Exponentiality by Vusi Thembekwayo for sure. Every African entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough. That is such a tough question. Yeah, that's a struggle for me. And it's a struggle because I'm trying to find...
Do you have a few that you would recommend?
I'm busy with making it big now. I mean, sure, that's a tough question. So I'll rattle off a few lists. They won't necessarily be authors who wrote for our context, but the principles apply still.
Yeah.
For sure, the Bible, Bill Collins, Good to Great. Okay. And I always say to every entrepreneur, don't just read that one, read all of them, because the arc in How the Mighty Fall is very important for the principles of Good to Great. So I would say read that. The E-Myth, still the OG of the OGs. Rework, great book, Rework. Yeah. Accelerate by John Cotter, really a great read, especially for this moment in the season that we are living in. I just want to say something on this. This is one of my, like, if God extended my life by 20% and my wealth by about 300%, I would actually dedicate some time to this, which is I don't think we spend enough time documenting our stories.
Yeah, archiving.
Particularly in business. And so the way I say to people is like, you know, when you go to Harvard, they've got case studies.
Yeah.
And you notice, I have a friend of mine who's faculty there, and he says one of their struggles is finding like academically data-rich case studies from our context, because we're just not publishing enough about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so if we can figure out a way to document those stories and publish them to the world, Mr. K, like, where's that book? Because certainly when I was getting into the world of venture capital and private equity, that book would have thrown me forward 20 years.
Yeah.
And so the things he forgot, I had to learn the hard way. Yeah. And because we're not documenting those stories, it's very, very difficult for entrepreneurs who follow us. The way I explain it, I feel like we're perpetually at version 1. Every generation has to version 1 something, because the generation after it, doesn't build this like reservoir of knowledge and build this library and this encyclopedia, which is ironic because the world's oldest universities in Timbuktu in Africa, we literally created the institution of higher learning, that we wouldn't have a place where we create best practice and knowledge and teach each other. Like, for me, it's just wild.
In Nigeria, we use this term where it's we keep paying school fees that have already been paid already, right? So somebody else, you've gone to school, you paid the school fees, but because it's not documented, everybody comes back and pays the same school fees over and over and over again.
Have you noticed though, now, I don't know how you feel about it. There's a part of me that thinks, first, it's probably because we don't know to, but I actually think a large part of it is by design.
Yeah.
I think, and hear my heart if my words fail me, I think that some of the older people think that if they told the younger people would unseat them.
Yeah, I was literally about to say overturn them. That was
Right?
literally what I was thinking, yeah.
But the interesting thing is, that literally is how evolution works. We're supposed to unseat you. My son plays basketball. They've got a tournament right now. They've been winning all of their games over the past 2 days. They just lost their first one by a single point. He's gutted. He's like, Dad, hates losing. And he plays junior NBA. He's really, really, really talented. He's 14. He's already taller than me, this kid. So when he was younger, I'd play with him and I'd run circles around him, dunk over him, disrespect him. And as he got older, the circles became shorter, and then the dunking stopped. I just shoot the 3-pointers. Now we're not even a 3-pointer anymore. Now we're a dad is faking hamstring injuries, right? But I had to learn
the evolution.
This is evolution. It's his time. It's his season. And so how I should adjudicate my proficiency as a dad is in the kind of man I have made him.
Yeah.
And I think if the older generation saw it this way, that you're supposed to pass it over, you're supposed to make it easier for the next generation, you're supposed to pass down the knowledge, you're supposed to institutionalize it, we shouldn't be starting at base level every single generation. If we could get that right, in 2-3 generations, we would fundamentally shift the trajectory of our continent for sure.
On that note, do you have a thesis on artificial intelligence, especially again for people on the continent? Like, do you have a working thesis on just AI in general?
Everybody keeps asking me this, and I don't yet.
Yeah.
I'm doing the reading. I'm playing with all the technologies, which is strange for a person who's not a coder. I've had to attend, one of those Coursera quick coding Python courses. So at the very least, I can make some logic out of this. But I don't yet. My concern is a friend of mine, John Shu, who runs a family office in the US, said to me the other day, he said it used to be that the distance between stories and reality was long. You'd come up with a thesis, a story on what the internet is going to do, and then 20 years later, the internet would do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he said that distance is kind of like collapsed now. The story is the reality. And so he says, as this becomes the case, that geometric graph is shortened over time. My concern is, I think, and I might be wrong, but from my vantage, just based on what I've seen in the ecosystem, the people raising, the things they're raising for, I still see us on the consumption end of this AI
not
thing,
making,
not the production end.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, don't you think that's wild? I mean, think about it. I'm 40. So I joined the world of work post Web 1.0, pre Web 2.0. Kind of when I started working was Web 2.0 became a thing, long before we were talking cloud.
Yeah.
And then, so we had Web 2.0, we had cloud, and then we had SaaS. And in between that, we had Web 3.0, then blockchain, and then machine learning, then AI. And in each and every single one of these blips in the technology curve, we're constantly on the consumption end. And I'm just like, so no one's going to join on the production side? Like nobody? I know in South Africa there is a few things happening. We even have a space program in South Africa, which is great. But this is what I mean. You know, I say to people all the time, guys, it's a true story. Like, there are two conditions. If we could get this right, if you can get South Africa and Nigeria to work together first, and then you could get South Africa and Nigeria to work, you change the continent.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
the leverage effect that Nigeria has in the West African, Central African region, and the leverage effect that South Africa has in the Southern African region and in capital markets would change the game. Like, it would just change the game. But for whatever reason, those two conditions just don't seem to come together.
It's by design.
I'm almost sure.
It's by
Yeah.
design.
I'm almost sure. I mean,
It is.
they won't watch this, so we got to be careful. We're still raising money.
And on that note, what is the one thing people get completely wrong about you?
You ask great questions. I don't like you.
That's why I'm quiet.
One thing people get wrong about me, probably that I think a lot of myself. I don't think a lot of myself. I just believe of myself. And so when I articulate what I believe, it sounds as if I'm arrogant. And I often articulate it because I'm convincing me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cheat my DNA and change my traumas and take ownership of them. In scripture, we say that which we speak, right? So that's probably the one. Can I mention a few?
Yeah, please.
The second is that I'm an asshole. I'm not. I'm just very clear. And as I've gotten older, my edges have softened a bit, and I've learned you have to have grace in how you deliver things. And then the third, which is the last one, is that I'm like non-social, which is not the case. I'm just a hermit. So I like my space, and I like to be alone. It's very nice for me. so I have like a threshold of how much of people I can take, which is, it's strange when your job presents
Yes.
External.
as a person who's like external, but actually you're truly just an introvert. You just want to chill and have conversation. And so I can sustain a conversation like this because I've spent time watching the podcast. So I kind of have an avatar of both of you. And I've mentally prepared myself for it. And so I think that allows me the space to do it. But if we're in a public, I'm one of those people who go to a conference, true story, and speak, get a standing ovation. And then in the general plenary session, I'll stand in the corner holding a little glass, hoping no one comes to say hello. Can I get a picture? I'm like, no, leave me, please. Okay, let's get a picture type of thing. So, yeah.
I'm literally the same way. And whenever I tell people this, they're like, what do you mean? You like to
Exactly.
talk? And I'm like, no, you don't understand how draining it is,
yeah.
when people are talking. And because I like big ideas, I don't do well with small talk.
Right.
So when you start going into like, well, how is the weather? And like, didn't you see that over there? And I'm just like, and he sees it.
Like,
all the
what are we
time.
doing? Yeah.
He sees all. He's like, she got that,
It's a thing though, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing. And I'm almost sure it must be like a condition, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I think you restore yourself in solitude because the work you go to do outside requires so much.
That's so good.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that isolation is actually needed. Like the sort of work we do, it requires you to be the person who steps out into the wilderness first, right?
Hey.
It's just like when Jesus went out of there for 40 days and 40 nights. It wasn't because he was vibes fasting or intermittent fasting. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm preparing myself for what is to
something.
come.
Amen.
Because what is to come is going to require so much from me, and I have to be able to tune out
That's good.
all the noise, right?
That's
And I
good.
think that's what isolation does for people like us who do work that requires us to step into the wilderness and into the unknown repeatedly, right?
That's
So,
good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Well, the last question we have, because I know you could be here all day with us, is who would you love to see on the Afropolitan podcast sitting right there?
By the way, Tunde Onakoya
Oh, yeah.
had said he wanted to see you sitting
out.
here. I
And
swear
so
to
we
God.
have you here. I was so excited.
Who would I like to see here?
Yeah. What story needs to be told?
There are a few people
Yeah.
that I think would do well, and a few people whose story I think is like, we need to document this. Uncle Mo for sure, Mo Ibrahim.
Yes, I have him.
He'd be great. He'd be great. Did you chat to his daughter?
No.
Yeah, she runs his calendar. Do you have her details?
No, please connect us.
I'll connect you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
she runs his calendar. She's good people, and I have a lot of time for Uncle Mo. I don't see him frequently or often. I've bumped into him a few times. We've kind of spoken at conferences together. I follow the Mo Ibrahim Prize, and again, it's about like what that story represents. I think that's important. You got to get Strive here. So I'll have a chat with those people. I think you've got to have a discussion with him. And just for the generational mix, you should get Sangu Dele here.
Okay, Sangoda.
Yeah, I'll connect you with him. You know,
I think we're connected.
No, we're
we're
connected,
connected.
Sangu,
We're
yeah.
connected.
you got to get Sangu.
Yeah.
I
We're
mean,
connected.
I struggle with Sangu because I feel like talking to Sangu is like having your computer with 50 open tabs. You know, it's just like your RAM slows down sooner or later. You're like, whoa, time out.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
But great mind, and he's a builder.
Yeah.
And I like builders. Have you had E already?
Yes, we have.
Of course you have.
Yeah, it was the second episode.
Was it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think those are for sure the people I think would do well on this podcast.
Okay, amazing.
Is that the last one?
Yes, that's the last. I know, right?
I feel like we just started.
We have, trust
We're
me,
just warming up.
We're gonna have a part 2, part 3.
We'll come to Joburg.
Yeah, we'll come in and do
Done
it in
deal.
your yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
come
you're
to
gonna do
Joburg.
my podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll come do
You're
it.
doing my podcast.
Yes,
we'll do it.
because I like the questions you asked.
The only condition though.
Okay.
Wait. So you'll do my podcast,
Yes.
no condition.
Yes. Okay.
But part 2 here, my only condition is, there should be 3 in the household.
Oh,
I
baby.
mean, I'm just putting it out
Lucy
there
out here manifesting, you know.
because you did it on the first night, right? You were like, when you had
That's
that
what I did.
conversation,
That's what I did.
so
That's what I did.
I'm
That's what I did.
socializing it for you, lest you hadn't
Amen.
already had the
Amen.
conversation.
Amen.
Amen. I love
From your
that.
lips to God's ears.
Yeah, and the timing sounds about right. So,
Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome.
I like that.
I want to say quickly before I
Yeah.
go, congratulations on putting this together.
Thank you.
I think, one of the things about subscriber numbers and viewership is you've got to see it for what it is, which is a lag artifact, and it's a lag indicator. And I think your podcast is in that very unique space, actually, where you can't measure your influence because the algorithm sees a set of eyeballs and goes 1 viewer.
Yeah.
But the people you're reaching, believe me, there's great depth and great influence there. So congratulations to both of you on
Thank
putting this
you.
together.
Thank you, Vusi.
If you know the amount of times we say your podcast is in our room, it's in our group chat, it literally cannot be measured because it's just everywhere.
Good.
And we just had no idea. So
I
we're
think one
just
of the
so
things
glad.
we said when coming into it was understanding that resonance is not virality.
Amen.
It doesn't always correlate, right? But
Amen.
it's deeper.
Amen.
Right. And I think that's the space we will hope that we continuously play in because again, you're playing eternal games. And when you're playing eternal games, it's not metrics, it's not KPIs, it's not this. It's like you're literally looking into the future and saying to yourself, can we build something that stays even for the future generation that's not even born, right? And when your timeline is that eternal, bro, you don't get caught up in like short-term things, bro.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.